Hello Goenkans, we are going through chapter life processes. In that chapter, we were going through subtopic respiration and then there were types of respiration. This is on page number 98 of your textbook. Our today's topic is anaerobic respiration. Our previous topic was aerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration is opposite of aerobic respiration. Aerobic and anaerobic. Fine. So the respiration that occurs in the absence of oxygen is called anaerobic respiration. When oxygen is not available, there is dearth of oxygen, anaerobic respiration will take place. Fine. Glycolysis is the first step, and glycolysis does not need oxygen. Fine. And glycolysis takes place in cytoplasm. So after glycolysis, if sufficient oxygen is not available, pyruvate does not enter mitochondria but is converted into ethyl alcohol or ethanol, a 2-carbon compound. Fine. What used to happen in aerobic respiration is, you can just check the reaction first. See, in this reaction, what happens? I'm talking about aerobic respiration just to compare it with anaerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration, glucose gets converted into pyruvate in cytoplasm, that is glycolysis. Then pyruvate enters into mitochondria and there the rest of the reaction takes place, isn't it? But you can see in this reaction, glucose is getting converted into pyruvate because there is no involvement of oxygen. But if this pyruvate has to enter mitochondria, oxygen should be there. As it is not there, oxygen is not there, this pyruvate will not enter into mitochondria. It will stay in cytoplasm only. Fine. And it will get converted into ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide and ATP. But ATP released is less. You compare it with aerobic respiration. There we get 38 ATP molecules. Here we are getting just 2 ATP molecules. Fine. So pyruvate does not enter mitochondria and is converted into ethyl alcohol, also known as ethanol. And there are microorganisms which go for such type of reaction, such as yeast. What they do is they derive energy through fermentation during anaerobic respiration. This is called fermentation. And sometimes when we go for vigorous exercise, physical exercise, hard work, physical hard work, the oxygen is used up very fast in our muscle cells. And the absence of oxygen leads to anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration takes place in our muscle cells and they release energy. This process is called lactate fermentation. What is it called? Lactate fermentation. This is the third reaction. You can check this on the video. Third reaction is there. I will try to make you understand with the paintbrush. Let me clear things first. Fine. This is lactate fermentation. Now what happens during this process? The pyruvate is converted into lactic acid. This takes place in our muscle cells. Fine. Lactic acid is produced. Second reaction was in few microorganisms like yeast, and first one is the aerobic respiration. Fine. Now I'm talking about third reaction. What happens? The lactic acid is formed. 3-carbon compound in absence of oxygen, and a small amount of energy is released, that is just 2 ATP molecules are released per molecule of glucose as a result of anaerobic respiration. Fine. So the energy released in aerobic respiration is much greater than the anaerobic respiration. And what happens when this lactic acid accumulates in our muscles, it builds up in our muscles, you will feel muscle cramps. And how to get rid of such muscle cramps? One can get relief from muscle cramps by taking a warm water bath or a massage. Now what happens because of that? That increases the blood supply, which in turn increases the oxygen supply to the muscles. I hope I am clear. This is about anaerobic respiration. Now let me teach you by this. See what happens. Let's compare aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration, 6 carbon molecule is there, glucose C6H6 H12O6, that is in anaerobic respiration as well. But what happens to this glucose in presence of oxygen? Glycolysis takes place in cytoplasm. Fine, see, glycolysis in cytoplasm. No oxygen is required. It gets converted into pyruvate. This step does not need oxygen. Fine. But when oxygen is present, this pyruvate will enter into mitochondria. See, it's entering into mitochondria in presence of oxygen and getting converted into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Fine. Then, if we talk about anaerobic respiration, what happens in anaerobic respiration? Same glucose molecule is there. Fine, glucose is there, 6 carbon compound. We call it 6 carbon compound because it is C6. C6 means 6 carbon compound. C6H12O6. Glycolysis in cytoplasm. Again, there is no need of oxygen. Oxygen is not required. Remember these points, they will help you a lot. Fine. Then this glucose gets converted into pyruvate. 2 molecules of pyruvate. 6 will get converted into 2 3 carbon compounds. Pyruvate, pyruvate, 2 molecules of pyruvate, because pyruvate is a 3 carbon compound. 6 you split it into 2. Fine. So it will be 3 carbon compound, 3 carbon compound. Then if this is not there, oxygen is not there, what will happen? It will stay, this pyruvate will not enter into mitochondria. It will stay in cytoplasm only, and pyruvate will get converted into 2 carbon molecule, that is ethyl alcohol, also known as ethanol. Fine. Remember this thing. Ethyl alcohol is also known as ethanol. Carbon dioxide is released, energy is released. Just 2 ATP molecules. Fine. Then, in this, our muscles, when we go for vigorous exercise, physical exercise, what happens? This 6 carbon compound gets converted into pyruvate. This is same in all 3 reactions. You can see this is same in all 3 reactions. Then the next step is different. Fine. Pyruvate, in absence of oxygen, gets converted into lactic acid, 3 carbon compound, 2 lactic acid molecules. Fine. And then what is released? Energy is released. This takes place in our muscle cells when we go for vigorous exercise, we go for some physical exercises, physical hard work. This is what happens in our muscles, and it creates muscle cramps. Fine? It leads to muscle cramps, and how to get rid of them, that I discussed with you. I hope I am clear. What you will do is you will go through a respiration. Then you will go through types of respiration, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration, and you will try to write difference on your own. I will teach you tomorrow, but then try to write difference, try to find out the differences between the two, make a column and jot down it. Fine, this is your today's assignment. It is on page number 98. You will read it from your textbook and then jot down the differences between aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. And whatever we give you as an assignment, whatever you have to write, you will write that on your fair notebooks. Please keep this thing in mind. You will not write it on rough. You will not write it on any other notebook. You will consume your own fair notebooks. Fine? I hope things are clear. Take good care of yourself. Bye-bye, Goenkans.